Well, might as well start off a little fun. I was going to say, why don't you start off Love is Blind UK? You got three things, I've got two, so we'll just bounce back and forth.
Let's do it.
All
Yeah,
right.
so started Love is Blind UK last week with the long Labor Day weekend. I have seen all six seasons of Love is Blind in the US where it started. The first season came out around Valentine's Day in 2020, so just before the pandemic. And I believe I started it. I definitely watched the first season later than when it was actually released, given that it was so new. But everyone was talking about it, a lot of social currency. And over the past couple of years, they keep on setting up and releasing new seasons in different cities throughout the US. First one was out of Atlanta. They went to Chicago, I believe Dallas, Houston, Seattle. Most recent season was out of Charlotte, and then they have a new one coming out in October, which is in Washington, D.C. So the past couple of seasons haven't been the best. I notice over time there's less couples that are taking it's really a social experiment, and the
Hmm.
whole intent for anyone that has not seen Love is Blind, it's a dating experiment to test if you can actually find someone that you fall in love with behind a wall, and taking all of the aesthetic factors out of the picture here and seeing if you actually can fall in love with someone for who they are just based on conversation. So the first week or so, I think first week or two, I don't know how long it actually is. You have 10 to 12 women on one side, and then 10 to 12 men on another side. And then what they do is they do like a speed dating situation with a wall in between where they get to speak and have, I guess, long dates to start or short dates to start, and they meet everyone and then kind of circuit through to the point once that like end of the next week ends up, or second week, whenever they call them the pods. And once they are really starting to settle and limit their options in the pods, the whole intent is to propose to someone sight unseen, which
Hmm.
is ridiculous in theory. But you just go with it. And I remember the first season I was watching, I was like, this is just wild how they came up with this concept. But there are two fairly happy couples that, I mean, this thing aired in 2020, I believe. The social experiment happened in 2018. So some of these couples have been married for like 5, 6 years now, 6 years actually, and they're still together. So, like with any dating reality show, it's going to be a small margin, but you get to see over time the success rate. And of course, it's popular to viewers because we're just so fascinated with dating culture nowadays, and unfortunately, the highs and lows that come along with it. So with Love is Blind UK, I just wanted to see how it was set up because I think the past couple of seasons of Love is Blind US has just been kind of a disappointment. It seems like now that the show's gone through a few seasons, people aren't taking it as seriously. They seem to cast some very, we'll just say, interesting individuals who aren't there for the most genuine reasons. And it seems like their intentions start off to be to find their loved one, but then slowly but surely things fall through the cracks, whether someone's just not happy with the person once they revealed, or once they live with somebody over a certain period of time. Because after the proposal, they have like a week in paradise, which is like the honeymoon stage, and then they have to live together for 2 weeks before they go to the altar, where they decide in front of all their friends and family, yes or no, are you gonna move forward and actually marry with this person, quote unquote, who was initially sight unseen. So after all of the disappointment, I think the past 3 seasons for Love is Blind US, I was like, I'm gonna give this a shot for Love is Blind UK. They have cast members from Scotland, one or two from Ireland, and then the rest are all in England. And yeah, overall, I liked most of the cast members. I think a majority of them were there for the right reasons. They have six couples this season, which is actually a pretty large amount. The past couple seasons in the US, maybe only like three, four made it past or to the proposal, if not past to the honeymoon stage, let alone to the altar. It just seemed to shrink as the weeks went by. But this season, they have six weddings, so six couples at least that are willing to go to the altar, which makes things interesting because you get to do like little case studies on each and every one of these couples, but they face very similar challenges, financial challenges, physicality, and the ability to really make it past somebody's aesthetics versus like what they actually connected with that person behind the wall. So it definitely goes into that. There's some interesting personalities that emerge once people meet parents, and then cultural differences. There's a woman this season who's Muslim, who has more traditional values versus her partner, who is more so about, he claims it's equality. We can say whatever we want, but he makes it known that he wants to share everything equally 50-50, and he wants his partner to be a working woman, not someone that just is a housewife. So he claims, right? And then you have the complete opposite. You have some couples that are more progressive in their values and such, that are working women and want to keep their lifestyle. What one woman is actually who coupled up. The woman is from Northern Ireland in Belfast, and she has a marketing career out in Belfast. And then the guy that she couples up with is a gym owner, owns a CrossFit gym in London. So those trials and tribulations of just, hey, I want to keep my career, I don't want to move. Just because I'm the female doesn't mean I have to relocate, just things like that. So I thought it was pretty good. The people on the season were fairly, I think, just in it for the right reasons. There were a couple of people where I'm like, all right, it doesn't mesh well couples wise, but overall, I think just the cast members were good people. Whereas in some of the US seasons, there's just such low of the low personalities and individuals that are just not kind at all, to the point where I don't even know, was there a screening process or was this intentional to let these people on the show? So, yeah, fascinating overall. If you really like to watch social experiments, I would give it a whirl. Kevin, I know you really like Love Island, which originated out of the UK, came to
Hmm.
the US. I know a lot of the viewership from those shows are crossbreeding, and
Yeah.
there's very similar themes with these two particular
Yeah. I've
reality shows.
watched I've watched some of probably the first season of Love is Blind. And it's
Hmm.
it's interesting, at least, as long as people are genuine, I think that makes it
Agreed.
more interesting. I think the longer these shows go on, the more people are there for the celebrity more than the
Yes.
experience. That's one of the things that the UK Love Island did last season that I really, really hated. So there's a dude over in the UK that's really like reality TV famous. His name, they call him Joey Essex. I don't know what his real last name is, but he's been on a bunch of reality shows. I think he was on um, Vanderpump at one point or something like that, and
Right.
uh, and so like he's relatively famous, and they put him on the show, and I was like, what? It doesn't like it's fine for like a stunt part of an episode or something, but like he was on
Right.
from the beginning, and it was just, and he was not somebody that I enjoyed watching. Um, and
Hmm.
like it was just, it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't lend well to the reality portion of the reality TV. Like, and then, everybody's talking about how the girl that he ends up with, it's like, is she even going to be able to deal with his life outside because he's
Right.
does all the celebrity stuff and
Hmm.
and he's in the spotlight all the time because he wants to be in the spotlight. Like it's you can tell the guy loves
Yeah.
fame and it's just yeah, it's unfortunate. Like I think probably the first season of Love is Blind in the US is probably one of the better ones, I would assume, because
Right.
nobody knows what else is going on. Like, of course, they're still there for a little bit of the fame, but at the same time, like this show hasn't taken off yet. You don't know if you're going to be a big deal or not from it or what.
Right.
So,
Exactly. And I mean, casting for seasons 2 through 7 all happened after COVID. At that point, it was such a hit. People were like, I want to try out for the show.
mhm,
Whereas with the initial one, I think casting directors were just reaching out. I remember one of the, what do we want to call them? Participants?
mhm,
Cast members? Sure, whatever.
yeah,
Was reached out to on a dating app by a casting director. And that's how he got on the show, and it's changed his life tremendously. So, and I mean, I don't envy these people. Their life is under a microscope, and a
mhm,
lot of them are sort of like with Love Island. They're beyond scrutinized, and especially if editing doesn't show you in a positive light, you're pretty
yep,
screwed, especially if you don't end up with someone. They had someone this season who made it to the proposal stage. His name is Sam. This guy is getting ripped apart. And I'm not gonna lie, based on everything that they show, he seems like a classic textbook narcissist and very troubled, like in serious need of therapy. However, we don't know him.
mhm,
We don't know if, regardless, this guy is getting beyond shitted on, and this is definitely going to affect his future dating perspectives without a doubt. And I'm not saying like, does he deserve it? I mean, that's up for debate because I don't know the guy, right?
right,
Editing for these reality TV shows could make you look at out to be like the worst person when really something is not said well in context to be something with
yep,
ill will. So who knows? But I just remember he proposed and he's like, I promise I'm here for the right reasons. And it's like a love triangle. There's always like at least one or two love triangles every
mhm,
season of Love is Blind. So this particular love triangle, this guy Sam, who is a fairly attractive person. They all are attractive, right? Like they don't, the people that they cast, no one's like, oh, I don't know about that person.
yeah,
Everyone's very attractive, right? And the woman that he links up with and that he builds a connection with, she likes him and another man. Um, I forgot, I think it's Benny or Benaniah, something like that. And he's like British guy, but also German descent, and he's got long hair. And he warns her about Sam and says, look, this guy doesn't have the right intentions. And then she asks him about it in the pods. He, as in Sam, denies. He's like, no, I'm here for the real reasons. Yeah, I want love. I want love. I want someone to love me. No one ever loves me, blah, 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 blah. And goes immediately into defensive mode when she asks him about it. And I think there's definitely editing that goes into there because there's no, like, in my opinion, no way that this woman, based on how it's portrayed on the show, would fall for that. Or maybe they do. I don't know. But whatever. Anyway, so she ends up accepting his proposal, turning down I'm going to call him the German guy, but the guy with the long hair. They do the reveal, and she gets just weird vibes when she meets him because he keeps on asking. Apparently, this guy has had a nose job and some work done. And he's like, how do I look? How do I look? And she's just like, this guy's like, making it all about him.
mhm,
And apparently she claims, and I don't recall seeing this, that he put the ring on the wrong finger. Just like it's weird. So she got weird vibes. She broke it off. And then she decides to meet up with the other guy who was, very interested in her, but she ended up not, getting to proposal stage. And they end up making their way through the experiment as a couple after the fact and being one of the 6 couples that gets to the altar. So that has happened, I think, once, yeah, once during one of the US seasons where a guy or girl chooses someone and it's between two people, and then they realize, all right, this is not the right person. I want to see how things work out with the other person, and then they connect and go to the altar. So that's interesting. But overall, I thought it was a good season. I mean, it's very rare to have 6 couples go to the altar and make their way through the experiment. Usually they'll start with maybe like 4 or 5 or 6, and then only like 2 or 3 make their way to the altar because shit hits the fan, there's fights, there's just a lot of drama. And this was, I mean, you can tell there's tension and some areas of improvement that's needed, whether it's
Yeah.
family involved, financial things. And then, I mean, there's always surprises too at the end when you're like, oh, they're definitely going to be together, or I don't see them moving on together. And then things just work out. So, yeah, give it a watch. I enjoyed it. I thought it was nice too to learn a little bit about, the culture out in the UK and see how they view marriage. Very similar to us here in the US, but nonetheless, I think it's still fresh for them, given that they haven't had their own season yet. So I imagine the same thing's going to happen with them, like with the US. You're going to get more people who are not as intentional with
Yeah.
everything when it comes to actually coming onto the show, or maybe people do come in with the right intentions and they just fall into the same patterns of choosing the wrong type of people and maybe aren't using the right skills to make things work with the right people. So I don't know. I'm not a relationship expert, but I do find it fascinating. I know it has a huge following. A lot of my friends watch it with their significant other. It's something that has had a lot of social currency since 2020, since
Mhm.
the initial one in the US came out.
Yeah. What's interesting about that one versus Love Island to me, is that Love Island leans into the social media and the fan aspects. So Love Island runs daily for
Hmm.
2 months, more than 2 months. I think there's like 50 episodes, so it's about 2 months, I guess.
Right.
Um, and people stay and leave based on public votes, right? Like it's very publicly interactive. And so the nice thing about Love is Blind is you take that part out because that's definitely one of the things um, that is kind of dangerous about it. Like there's been with Love Island, there's been in the UK, there was a couple of suicides after the show,
I
um,
heard about that.
because
Yeah.
and some of the people already had issues. Like it's not necessarily only because of the show, but it certainly doesn't help. Like you get just plastered across social media when you're on these shows now, and it's
Right.
just like it's tough. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think, like I said, I feel like Love is Blind might be a little healthier in that regard, but at the same time, like just completely ignoring like the physical component of getting to know somebody is a little
Yeah.
dangerous in its own way too. Like I don't know. It's
I will
interesting.
say last season, there was one girl who was ripped apart for months. Her name's Chelsea. She's a flight attendant. This is the last season that came out earlier this year, I believe, in 2024. And that one takes place in Charlotte. She's, I don't know, mid late 20s, very attractive girl. And they show in the pods, they ask them questions like, oh, if there's a celebrity that you look like, and she says Megan Fox. This girl does not
Oh,
look
I
like Megan
remember this
Fox.
one.
But
Yeah,
it's been all over
yeah.
social media, and people were making, honestly, it was just one of those comments that I think was like blown out of proportion because I'm sure people have these conversations, but because of what happens after and such, and the guy that ends up choosing her and proposes to her, it's between her and another girl, and the other girl is a mother of a daughter who's, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, something like that. And she's like an absolute smoke show. And I think he thinks, all right, who do I choose? The mom, who he doesn't know what she looks like, or the girl who says she looks like Megan Fox, right? And then they do the reveal, and it's just like, oh, awkward. She looks more like Adele, and she's beautiful, right? But she does not look like Megan Fox. And at one point, he's like, she doesn't look like Megan Fox.
Yeah.
And it's like this poor girl gets ripped apart. And honestly, I felt so bad for her because I've like watched interviews and different things on social media. Everyone's like, she's actually like a really nice girl in real life. And they took that comment way out of proportion. They focused on her insecurities because she is more of a curvier girl.
Hmm.
And honestly, I just felt really bad for her because her edits sucked. They sucked. And other people on the show were made out to look more positively on the show. So that's where I get a little mm, iffy about it. I mean, yes, I think the fact there is no live social media, like it's taped and then usually doesn't come out until 9 to 12 months after
Hmm.
the fact. So you get a lot of hate way after, but
Yeah.
still, it's just like, can you imagine, especially she's a flight attendant? That's got to be hard going back to work and being in like such a public type of role and interacting with people on a day-to-day basis. But this poor girl was literally getting ripped apart, and the guy that she coupled with, they ended up, shocker, not getting married. Um, but I guess they claim they're friends, whatever, I don't know. But he was defending her and saying, like, leave her alone. You know, it is what it is. And like anyone can say they look like a celebrity. I've been told I look like certain celebrities, and I don't see them half the
Hmm.
time, but it's everybody's opinion. And
Yeah.
it's very tough because if someone doesn't see that, it's funny and awkward. Um, and then you give people negative expectations, they'll be like, "Oh my God, she looks like her. I think that's a hot celebrity. Let me choose her." And that's sort
Yeah.
of like at least the way the show portrayed it, that was like that comment was the deciding factor as to why he chose this girl Chelsea over the mom Jess, who again, absolute smoke show. But she had her own shtick between having a kid, and also she was pretty confrontational. And I think
Mm.
he didn't like that about her just in the pod. So, but they don't make that a focal point either. That it's just like, oh, it's because she said she looks like Megan Fox. But yeah, even people who haven't seen that season, everyone's like, what's this Megan Fox comment bullshit? Like it blew up.
Yeah, I don't watch the show, and even I remember that. Like I didn't um yeah, like I remember seeing it and I was like, "Oh, yeah, no you don't."
But like they do the reveal and you see his face, like he's so excited, and then he's just like, "Wah, wah." It's funny. Like it's funny, but it's also like I feel bad for her because it's just got to be a horrible feeling. So yeah, I mean there were like one or two couples where I could tell like this season where it wasn't what they were initially ideally looking for, but or what they normally go for is probably what I would say. But sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to go for something different.
Yeah, and I think too, the longer these shows go, the more they know what the audience reacts to, so they'll start casting people that have
Yeah,
personality type X, Y, and Z that lines up with what they're doing.
right.
And sometimes that's not for the best, you know?
Right. No, and I mean some of the people are just very broken and unsettled, insecure, and it's like, is there any type of mental health check for some of these shows? I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't think there is, or I don't, at least not a very good one. Like you can see on some of these shows just the people that aren't ready for it or that are making the
100%.
wrong decisions because they're not ready for it. Yeah.
Right. And I mean they get a range of people. Figure I think the youngest person I've seen is like 23, 24, up to
Hmm.
38, 39. I know the first season there was a girl who was like 36, and then she ended up coupling up with a guy that's 26, and she did not like the way he looked. He was shorter than what she was going for. And then she made it more about the age. It's like, but you knew about the age before he proposed, and
Yeah.
just going back on things. I'm very Christian. He's not, but you talked about religion in the pod. So people will make a lot of excuses and stuff, but again, we never know what is the truth based on editing and maybe some things that happen behind closed doors.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's entertaining. I did enjoy the season. Um, there were three couples out of the six that ended up getting married, which I'm like 50% is quite good. I like that.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was. That was good. And then out of those, because they do the reunions after, out of those three couples, two are still together. One is in the process of a divorce. So I think the fact that they rush it too, it's sort of like with The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. They rush these things too much. How do you know? And I know some people are like, oh, but in the old days, people would get engaged after a few weeks. And it's like, okay, fine, but it was a very different time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if you go back to Love Island as an example too, like you can look at the number of couples that have made it, and it seems like it's a fair amount until you think about the sheer number of people that go that through that show, because that show actually cycles through people as the show goes on too. They bring people in and people leave and things like that.
Right.
So like the number of people that go through is really high. So the percentage of people that actually make it is pretty low. But to be fair, I mean that's real life. Like it's real dating, right? Like you don't just meet somebody in the real world and it works perfect and everything's good. Like
Right.
you gotta, you gotta kiss a few frogs first to get, to the where you want to be, and it's hard. It's really hard, and some of these shows too, where you only have, five options. And then as soon as people start to pair up, all of a sudden you only have one option, but you want to stay because especially with Love Island, like Love Island, you might win money at the end. So like,
Right.
do you stay and try and get to the point where you can win some money? Do you play that social media angle and hope that people love you and all that? Like it's,
Or maybe your true love is on his or her way in the next round
yep,
of people
yep,
coming in. Yeah, that's pretty wild.
yeah.
Uh, I know they do that with Bachelor in Paradise, which is like a whole spinoff. It's like, well, obviously people are gonna want to be on Bachelor in Paradise now and go on to The Bachelor,
Hmm.
The Bachelorette. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's messy stuff. It's fun to watch for the drama, but I do not envy anybody on these shows. I think it's
Same,
yeah, I think it's a mental health check that I personally am not ready for. Like I would not want to be in that situation. I wouldn't want to be publicly like just have everything aired out and then have to deal with the backlash afterwards. That's I think the hardest part.
for sure.
Oh, all right. Well, let's see. All right, if we're going to do Love is Blind, I will move on to something else on Netflix because I apparently only live on Netflix now. Um, but I think maybe we'll do our true story stuff here, so you can do Arena's Vow after this.
Okay.
But I watched a movie on Netflix called The Deliverance, not Deliverance, which is a movie with Warren Beatty back in the 70s, I think. This is The Deliverance, and it is an adaptation of a true story that happened in, I think it was Geary, Indiana.
Okay.
And they changed the names, they changed the situation. Now that this film takes place in Pennsylvania. They really tried to distance it from the true story a little bit. But in watching it and reading up on the true story, they didn't really story wise um, stray too far from the plot. And so the gist of this story is that you've got a mom played by Andra Day, who I don't remember if I've seen her act anywhere before, but she's amazing. Like she's really good in this. She's really intense. She's got three kids. Her husband has left her, and they're separated because she is an alcoholic. But she got to keep her kids. So she's got the three kids. She's trying to make life work. She's trying to not drink, but she struggles with it through the movie.
Hmm.
And to make ends meet and to help her mom through cancer, her mom moves in, and her mom, even though Andra Day is black and her kids are black, Glenn Close plays her mom. So she was raised, um, biracial,
Okay.
and that was a choice of Lee Daniels as the director, and reading up on it, like he
Hmm.
really wanted to. Um, he made some of the choices that he made in the film just to show the differences in the things that don't get shown in film very often. People don't talk about in film, and it doesn't seem like it's really an issue. They're just kind of showing that it's a thing that exists. But
Right.
like how, in his interview, he's talking about how it's hard to be, a girl in a black body raised by a white woman. Like it's like there's
Yeah.
dynamics there that the parents can never like totally understand. And I don't like they definitely butt heads. Like her and her mom don't get along particularly well in the movie.
Sure.
Um, but they love each other, but it's definitely there's a ton of tension. But it's Glenn Close. So she's amazing. And
Yep.
she's got cancer, and it's not a she's in chemo, and it seems like she's surviving. I don't know if they ever say that she's not going to make it. Um,
Hmm.
but like she's rough at points. Like they did a great job on her. There's a lot of scenes where she's walking around with like out a wig on, and she's definitely got like the chemo hair. She looks run down, all that. So it was um a good characterization by Glenn Close. And so they move into this house that they have to rent, and all of a sudden weird things start happening. Her youngest son starts talking to an imaginary friend named Trey, and they just like he starts being really weird at one point there. He somehow ends up in the basement. She doesn't know how, and she hears like knocking on the door, and she opens the door, and he is just like kind of glassy eyed and just banging his head against the door. And as it goes on, we start to realize this is a possession film. So there's something in the house that is possessing her kids and possessing, whatever. And so as the film goes on, she starts to have to try and deal with this thing that she doesn't necessarily believe in at first, right? Like it's not something that anybody would totally buy into.
Right.
And because she's a drinker, because she's had to deal with child protective services, there's a
Right.
CPS agent that's coming by regularly. This agent comes to the house and is seeing bruises and things on the kids that are being caused by whatever's happening in the house.
Right.
And like they don't know that it was not her. So
Hmm.
she's trying to fight that battle also. And when things go really crazy, um, at one point, the youngest kid ends up at the hospital. They take her other two kids away. Glenn Close's character ends up trapped in the house because Glenn Close's character is really the first one to accept that this is like a possession thing. She brings
Hmm.
like a cross into the house. She goes and talks to the church and asks if they can help,
Right.
and goes through all this stuff. And they, her character doesn't make it. Like her character, dies because of this thing in the house. And it it's a total wild story. Like I don't want to ruin the end, but I mean it's a possession horror story about a family. It really most of the time goes one of two ways. Either everybody dies or they make it out, right? Like that's kind of how it goes. Um, and it's just the acting is really good. The kids are really good, but what is really, really wild is that it's based on a true story. And some of the things that are documented from the true story show up in the movie, and it feels like it shouldn't be true because it seems like it's, over the top horror movie stuff.
Hmm.
People swear this like people in government positions swear this stuff happens. So at one point when Child Protective Services is watching the kid at the hospital, they bring him to talk to a therapist, and the therapist is, they're looking at the therapist notes, and the therapist is like, yeah, maybe this is the mom's alcoholism and the kids are performing for her, whatever. Like maybe they're just trying to protect her, or they think, whatever. And at some point, like the kid starts talking in another language. His voice gets super deep. He tells the therapist that he should kill himself. Like crazy shit coming out of this little like 7-year-old boy. And like this actually happened. And then there was a time when they they went to um the kid was hospitalized, and the CPS agent was there, and that therapist was there, and they all swear that this kid literally walked up a wall into the corner of the room. Like, they adamantly swear that this thing happened. They stand nothing to gain from lying about this. And it's really, really crazy because they show it in the movie, and again, like, you see it in the movie and you're like, that's over the top. Um, but
Hmm.
like in the story, they talk about how the mom said they first really in real life started to believe that there was a problem when they heard footsteps on the basement stairs at night. They saw what looked like a man walking through the house, and like or the shape of a man walking through the house. And when they'd go to the spot, there was like wet boot prints on the ground. And as she
Hell
said, at
no.
one point, her kid was levitating. The problem was they couldn't move out because they couldn't afford anything else. So they were stuck in this house. It is a crazy story. And their last name, I think, is Ammon, Ammon. You can look them up, and it is crazy how, Lee Daniels changed some stuff. The Exorcist that shows up, he wanted to cast a woman as the Exorcist because he said that, out there in the world, not just exorcists necessarily, but priests and pastors and stuff like that, there's a lot of women that do this job that we never see represented because we always see men as priests and all that.
Right.
And so he wanted to, you know, go a little woman forward on that. And it was I think what makes the movie like really like 10 times better is knowing that this was a real thing. And then I found out that there was a guy that did on Travel Channel, History Channel, something like that. He does a Ghost Adventures
One of those. Okay.
show. And so when this family finally was able to get out of the house, they left and never came back. Now, she lost her kids in the process of this for a while because Child Protective Services was still involved, and, they're like, "This is not good. Like, this
Hmm.
is whatever." She in real life, she ultimately does get her kids back after, a few months. Like, she goes out, she's now, like, devoutly religious, she doesn't drink anymore, like, through with the things that she's been through, she's totally changed her life. But when they moved out, this guy that does this ghost adventure show bought the house the second everybody was out of it. And so there's a whole documentary on Amazon Prime right now called Demon House. And it's all
Hmm.
about his experiences in that house after they left. And he comes and he does all this stuff. And it's a little weird. Like, it's definitely feels a little performative in the way that he does things. Like,
Right.
he talks about how he um
Hmm.
reached out to the family, and they didn't
Respond.
well, they responded at first, and then when he said, he
Hmm.
wanted to interview them, they said no thank you. And like, he finds their house and like goes there anyways to try and get them to talk. And I was like, okay, that just makes you a dick. Like,
Right.
I know what you're trying to do, but like, if they said no, like, they just went through some shit, like, leave them alone.
Oh yeah.
Um, and he talks to a family member and some stuff like that, but it's not, you know,
When
it
does
just
this
doesn't
take
feel
place,
good.
Kevin? Like what years?
I don't the film seems like it's a little more recent, and it's not a
Hmm.
long time ago. I think this happened, the real story happened in 2011. So it's not that
Hmm.
long ago. We're not talking about some old school like
1980s
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is like pretty recent. And like in the documentary, it is interesting because they show some news clips. Like, this was national news. Like, they talked about this on the news. They talked about this house and all this stuff. And ultimately, the dude that did the documentary and bought the house was freaked out by the whole thing, or at least claims to have been freaked out. There's a lot of weird stuff that happened when he was there. People definitely started behaving differently, and he tore the house down. So after he bought it, he just tore it down. The lot is now just an empty lot, and hasn't been built on since. And it's crazy. It's a really crazy, trippy story, and I think I would almost say for I don't know what the right order is to do it because I did movie and then read about the stories and then watched that documentary. And
Gotcha.
I think all of those three things kind of work well together. I don't know. I don't know what the right way to watch it is. I feel like maybe read about it a little. Well, screw it. Watch the movie, read about it, and then watch the documentary because, like, if you read about it, you might know too much about what's going to happen.
Right.
So, like, from a film standpoint, you don't want to, too many surprises.
Sure.
Um, and then read about it because then you're like, holy crap, X, Y, and Z really did happen, and that's totally insane. And then you can watch the documentary and just see, the extra bits of information that are in there that are also kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
But it's a trip because, like I said, it's a true story, and you know, it, a lot of times I'll watch these things that are based on true stories, and you're just like, okay, well, they definitely fluffed this up and, did these
Hmm.
things to make, because like if you watch the Conjuring movies, it's hard to picture some of the things that they went through being real. And we don't have the level of documentation about those things that we have with this movie. So, you feel like liberties
Right.
are being taken. Whereas in this one, like one of the craziest thing, like watching it, I was like, that's like, it looks cool. I was like, but that's corny. And then to find out that they're like, yeah, no, that these people at least believe that this really happened. And I was like, okay, that's crazy. So yeah, it's really, it's a trip for sure. So
Yeah.
if you like the scary stuff, and to be honest, like for I don't corny's not quite the right word, but like as performative as the documentary was,
Right.
um, it was still creepy to watch, knowing having read the articles and about it, knowing that it was pretty much real, was
Hmm.
it was unsettling for sure. So
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
And
So if you want
Netflix
to,
like spearheading it, being like, let's make this a film.
yeah, so if you've got like 4 hours to just give yourself the willies, do those two things and read up on it, and it's a good time.
Yeah, interesting. Probably
Yeah,
not my cup of tea, literally, but I do more like slasher type of,
yeah,
or like, well, Saw type of scary, not that. That's too real for me. I don't like that.
yeah, yeah. It's a trip. Like the
Like
real stuff.
paranormal type
Yeah,
of stuff, I can't do. I get too freaked out. No way.
yeah, and I yeah, horror doesn't really get to me, and like I'm not like I'll go to sleep tonight just fine. Like it won't bother me that much,
Yeah.
but um, it it's just a trip. It's just crazy. It's crazy, like
Yeah.
because it's real enough. Like I'm sure,
Totally. Enough testimonials.
yeah,
This is not just like, oh, one person said this happened. Like there are medical professional, like people involved.
yeah,
Yeah, that's not, no.
yeah,
You had me at true story. No, thank you.
yeah,
Um, but I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad this is a good way for you to get, started into spooky season.
yeah, yeah, and Glenn Close is awesome. Like
Oh
she's
yeah,
really great in it too. So
she's a scary actress herself in just some of the roles that she's played.
yeah, she plays crazy real well.
She does. She does.
Yeah.
So interesting.
All right, cool. So we will move on to more reality. Went from reality TV to reality horror to
Based on real,
yeah,
historical events.
yeah. He said Arena's Vow.
Arena's Vow was recommended to me by my mom a couple weeks ago. It's currently streaming on Paramount Plus. This came out last year, 2023, and it's a Holocaust movie. and it is about a Polish woman by the name of Irena Gut, who is figure in her 20s, and she is a Catholic in Poland during the 1930s when a lot of this is going down in Europe and Germany is invading borders and starting to take over different towns and, of course, bring the Jewish people out of their homes and into ghettos. So it starts off, this woman, Irina, is a nurse, and once Nazis take over, things change. People get moved around to different careers. She starts off, as many people do, working in a factory, and she is there for about a little over a year. And she one day faints due to a lot of the labor intensive aspects to the job that she has to do. And I'm assuming at that point she was also very undernourished, as were a lot of people during that time with the scarcity of food and such. So one of the Nazi officers comes up to her and says, I need a good worker. You're not like fit for this, but how are you when it comes to housekeeping and preparing food? She says, fine. So she ends up getting moved to a different location. She's now going to be like the head of the kitchen and overseeing the laundry department. The laundry department, it's almost like set up in this, I want to say, like dining hall setup, almost like as if it's like on a Nazi campus of some sort. So she's interacting with different officers, and she's given the responsibility of not only going into the kitchen, preparing, and then giving out hors d'oeuvres and like serving, but she also has to oversee the laundry department, which is at that point consisting of 11 to 12 Jewish people in Poland. And it's mixed. I think it's like four women and I want to say like five, six men, something like that, maybe a little bit more. And she's instructed to like get them into order because apparently they have to not only wash the clothes, but they have to be good tailors. And I remember she's speaking to these 10, 11, 12 people, and four of them are married couples. And none of them are, I think one of them might be like in the artistic and craft field, but every one of them, like one's a doctor, one's a chemist, one's an accountant. They were in their own career paths. And at that point, she says we have to get it together because otherwise, if you guys don't get it together, you're going to be kicked out and they're going to send you off to a concentration camp because it's as history goes, the Jews were thrown out of their homes. They're put into these like ghetto type of setups, right? They have specific jobs, and then eventually, over time, they're shipped out to concentration camps, almost like in different stages over the course of, um, you know, World War II and just Holocaust history. So she gets reassigned after, I figure, a couple of months to personally be a housekeeper for one of the like top Nazi officers in that area. And as she's assigned, they tell her like, hey, you're going to be taking over the house, and what you're going to do is to make sure that he moves in well, you're going to have to prepare the home before he even gets moved in there. So you're going to supervise the painting and everything else. So as this is going on, she receives notice from just, people gossip. Well, I shouldn't say gossip, but there's talks that they're going to get rid of all of the Jewish people in that area within a matter of a week or two. So she comes up with this plan. Since it's such a big house, it's going to be just the officer and herself. Why don't I hide these individuals that she's become close with working in the laundry and housing them secretly in the basement? So she plans it out where she is able to, as she's preparing the home, move these 11, 12 individuals to this, like, I think they call them majors, but to this major's new home that's being remodeled and renovated at this point. She originally puts them all into like behind this vent in the master bathroom, which was pretty interesting to get them in there. And then she's really methodical and just hiding them throughout the house. Like at one point they're in the attic, and then the workers during the day are working on the basement. And then she's like, oh, tomorrow come and work on the attic. Can't we do the attic today? Nope, you can't. I want to make sure that we're doing things properly before the major gets there, just to make sure that because she's put at risk too. If they get caught, she's going to be screwed. And so is the major because he's the one who owns that home. So she eventually gets all of them in the basement. And throughout the film, there's times where the major is trying to go into the basement because he hears footsteps and there are rats, and he ends up seeing some of the rats. He's like, oh, it's just rats, and they almost get caught. And in that group of people, one of the couples ends up getting pregnant. So that's the other thing where they're asking her, hey, would you be able to get us these supplies because we might need to give this woman an abortion because we can't have a baby. The baby's
Hmm.
gonna blow our cover and everyone's gonna end up getting in trouble and then eventually end up dead. So there's different threats that come up throughout the film. There are points where this major is thrown into question about his big home and if he is hiding Jews. And he's like, no, there's no way that I'm hiding Jews. And, um, my housekeeper, it's just me and my housekeeper. And he's got no clue at all of like what's going on at the bottom of his home. And it's interesting at one point, he's like, I want to have a soldier here to help you with things in the house because I'm going to be throwing parties because a lot of these Nazi officers threw parties, it was, the day job and then at night they socialized and had their German music going and they had cocktails and pretty extravagant dinners. So she's in charge of organizing in the kitchen and serving this lavish meal and serving cocktails. And he's like, I don't think you can do it on your own. And she's like, yes, I can. And this one scene's pretty incredible because she has to there's at least like 10 to 20 people at this party. And she's serving and everything like that. And the people in the basement, they're preparing the meal. They're doing everything. So she's got all the food. They're helping her. And she tells the major, I don't need any help. I don't need the soldier. Let me prove it to you at this party. And you're just like, all right, what's going to happen? Either he's going to catch her or she's going to magically be able to prepare everything. And it's sort of like Cinderella, and she's got these magic people in the basement helping her. And even at the end of the party, he's like, you outdid yourself. Do you have magic mice helping you? She's like, no, I'm just like, playing it up. She's like, I'm just really extraordinary. I'm very well prepared and trained as a housekeeper, etc. But she's very grateful for the individuals down in the basement. And you get to see it very similar to Schindler's List and how he was able to save, I mean, he saved hundreds and hundreds of people. She saved only like 11 or 12, but nonetheless, how she made it her duty to protect these individuals. So I thought it was a good film. Another good story of people outside of the Jewish community doing the right thing and the thing that was hard and against what society was projecting at that point and communicating with their rhetoric and anti-Semitic regulations and laws at that time. And she went against that and questioned it, like, what's wrong with the Jewish people? How are they the enemy? And why are there such drastic measures being taken? And she even said, like, once the Jews are gone, her as a Polish person, they're the next target.
Yep. Yep.
We have to do something about this. So, and they show individuals, non-Jewish people in Poland that at one point she goes to like the market and then they have like in the town square, I don't know, four, five, six people, one being a little girl standing and they're put in ropes and hanged for this. I guess what do you call them? Gallows? I don't even know
Hmm.
anymore. Gallows. And I know in like several films you'll see this as an example to the rest of the town. This is what happens when you betray the government, or in this case here, Nazi Germany. So definitely left a mark. I thought it was good. Came out last year. I mean, in general, I learned a lot from Holocaust, World War II films. I'm always, interested in these true stories because, I mean, look, Anne Frank's probably the most famous one,
Oh,
followed
sure.
by Schindler's List, right? But there's so many other untold stories throughout Europe that are so important and should be told.
Looking at it, because I was looking at the cast, and I think I know the answer, but
Okay.
is it a foreign language film?
No. So
Okay.
there is some like Polish and I think German spoken, and when they do have that, they'll have the subtitles, but everything a majority of the film is in English.
Okay. Because the cast, if you look at the names,
It's
is
all they're all
super
European.
Polish. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
they're all
the
European.
there's a lot of names here that I probably would butcher if I tried to pronounce them. And
Right.
I think that's really impressive. I think um when you get the right people for the parts, that's always a big deal. But um
Hmm.
like Doug Ray Scott is the main guy. He's been around the girl. And that's why like her name, her last name, I don't know how to pronounce it, looks maybe her last name is French. Her first name is Sophie.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe she was European, and then I looked her up really quick, and then she's actually one of the main characters on Yellow Jackets.
Oh,
Um,
she's Canadian, it looks like.
okay, probably French Canadian.
Yeah.
Um, and because yeah, her name looks very French.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, she's one of the main characters on Yellow Jackets, which is obviously an English speaking show, and I know Doug Ray Scott speaks English, so I was like, I assume it's in English, but there's so many Polish
Yeah.
names that like I wasn't sure.
Yeah. No, it's all in English. I mean, a couple scenes like when you have like some Nazis speaking among each other, they're speaking in German and that's
Sure,
being
sure.
translated. But in general, and even just, I mean, they have Hebrew prayers that are said. So of
Oh,
course,
sure.
like I know these prayers from growing up and going to Hebrew school. But yeah, other than that, it is in English.
No. Yeah, it sounds like a good story for sure.
It was
Um,
definitely was. Yeah, give it a watch if you're interested in a true story that revolves around the Holocaust and those people that protected and saved Jewish lives.
like I said, those stories are always impressive to me because, like you said, these are people that know that if they fail at what they're doing, they're dead. Like that's how it
100%.
was. Like if you try and help these people, if
Hmm.
you succeed, great. You can feel good about yourself. These people go on and have a good life. Whatever. You fail and you're dead. Like someone's going to come find you and they're going to kill you. So
Right.
you're putting your whole life on the line to save people. I mean, that's
And unlike Oscar Schindler, who was a man of power, who
mhm.
had his own factory, this is just, she's a housekeeper. She's maybe like, and not to put it like as if it's a caste system, but she's just a step above the Jewish population. Like she's
Mhm.
next on the cutting board,
For
right?
sure.
So if anything, like I think a lot of it's like her looks helped her get this housekeeping job. A pretty young woman gets this job as the housekeeper and organizer of one of the lead and top majors within the Nazi regime at that time in that specific area in Poland. So yeah, but I mean you don't see any concentration camp scenes, so that part, I mean, you do see some like violent scenes, like there's a violent scene in the beginning with a baby, which was very hard to watch, but that's something that she sees before she even comes up with this plan to protect and hide people. She realizes like this is not good.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. It looks good. And
Yeah,
I like her. She's really talented. She's really good on Yellow Jackets. So
nice.
it was good to see her, you
In a
know,
leading role in a film.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of starting to break out. Like she's kind of the so in Yellow Jackets, there's basically two sides to the story. You have the story being told about when they were stuck in the woods, and then you have the story
Hmm.
20 years later when they're adults,
Sure.
right? So those of them that survived, and she's one of the main characters from the young from the young kids side in the past, and I mean
Gotcha.
she's good in that too for sure. But yeah, this looks like it's probably a much heftier role, and it sounds like from what I was seeing, just in like, granted it's a trailer, but it looks like people were pretty impressed by her performance.
Yeah, she did a very good job for sure.
All right. All right, cool. So then I will move on. Not again, not very far. I'm still on Netflix. I started,
Staying with
yeah,
another Netflix special.
yeah.
Continue.
But I should call Netflix and see if we can get some kind of kickback, for only talking about Netflix. I started
Yeah.
watching The Perfect Couple, which is on Netflix. Um, it's Nicole Kidman, it's Liev Schreiber, a handful of other faces and names that I recognize. Megan, oh, Dakota Fanning is probably my favorite part of this whole thing. I'll get to her in a
Okay.
minute. She's amazing. Megan Fahey from White Lotus season two. She was the wife that kind of got it the whole time. She was the one that understood the situation. I think she was Theo James's wife.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
she seemed like kind of a dumb blonde, but she was more of a I accept my reality and I'm
Yeah,
gonna play my
exactly.
advantage here, aka sleep with my trainer.
Yeah. Yeah. So Perfect Couple feels
Right.
like somebody tried, and so it's based on a book, and I guess the book was really popular, but it
Hmm.
feels almost like Big Little Lies light. So
Okay.
the gist of it is you have this incredibly rich family. They have a house in Nantucket, which is, only rich people could be there, right? It's a big
Sure.
ass house. They're super rich. Nicole Kidman is an author. She's very famous. And they are throwing a wedding for I think it's their middle son. And the girl that he's marrying is very, like, she went to, what is it, Miami University of Ohio. Like, she went to
Hmm.
school on a full scholarship. Like, she's a smart girl, but she's very normal. Like, she didn't come from this rich lifestyle that this family has. And so they're going to get married on this island, and it's the day of the rehearsal dinner. And of course, there is a murder. And then everything kind of breaks down from there. It becomes the police department's trying to solve the murder. We have flashbacks in each episode that kind of show what people were going through, in the past up to that day, and then the police investigating. Now, admittedly, I'm only halfway through this. It's only 6 episodes, so
Hmm.
it goes pretty quick. They're an hour each. The acting is great. Like, everybody in this is a really good actor. Dakota Fanning is in it, and I love her because I always like Dakota Fanning. I think she's fantastic. I think she's super talented, but
Hmm.
she always plays such serious, like, heavy roles. Even when she was a little kid, when she was in I Am Sam, she's like this big, and she was super serious. And
Oh
like,
yeah.
in this, she uh like, funny isn't quite the right word. Like, it's not a comedic role, but she definitely, she's maybe kind of like Megan Fahey's character in White Lotus. Like, she understands that she married into a rich family, and she's just gonna ride that. Like,
Right.
but she's snotty, she's kind of shitty, but she smiles a lot. Like, it just feels like a different role for her than I'm used to seeing her in. And it
Sure.
seems like she had a lot of fun with it. And it's really great to see because, um, again, it just is different. And I think that's a big deal.
Right.
And, but so as the show goes on, um, just like Big Little Lies, you have twists and turns. You think you're given an answer, and then by the end of the episode, maybe that answer has been kind of wiped out. And then a new question is asked, as like, who is the killer? Now, I don't want to say what my theory is, but I have a theory as to what happened. And I think they gave it away in the first episode, which would really
Hmm.
kind of disappoint me. Um, but I'm curious to see if it really is what happened. But
Mm.
otherwise, like, it is very twisty and turny, and there's all this stuff. going on, but it breaks down into rich people drama. It's the same, like I said, with Succession. Succession was a hard show for me to get into because I look at these rich people and I'm like, I have nothing in common with you. The show is
Right.
amazing, the acting is amazing. Like Succession is a phenomenal show. There's no doubt about it. But I really had a hard time with it because I was like, e- everybody's just kind of a dick. Like
Yeah.
at least this
A
in
dick,
that
but also
regard,
beyond dysfunctional.
yeah. And this show at least has the main girl who
Yeah.
feels like a fish out of water. And then there's another guy that is friends with them that kind of feels
Hmm.
that way too, although he knows how to navigate the waters of this lifestyle, even though he's maybe not the
Sure.
rich socialite type either. At
Hmm.
least so far, it's kind of an imperfect show. Like it's not amazing. It's like
Right.
Big Little Lies is the better show. Like
Okay.
if you're gonna watch one of the two, go watch Big Little Lies. It's better. Um, this one is it's really pretty. Like I said, it's on Nantucket. There's lots of water and boats and big houses and all
Hmm.
that. And it's kind of funny because the opening scene of every episode is almost like them doing a flash mob for the wedding. They there's a song going and everybody's just dancing on the beach. And it's just
Hmm.
like the opening credits or whatever, right? Like it's just kind of the way they open it up.
Sure.
But between that and the original trailers I saw, I actually almost thought this was a comedy. Like the first trailer made it seem lighter than it is.
Sure.
Um, and like I was thinking of something closer to like Knives Out when I started watching it.
Okay. Huh.
And it's definitely not. It's definitely dramatic. I mean, like I said, it's lighter than Big Little Lies, but it's not. It's not a comedy by any stretch. There are a couple of people that are relatively funny. Like one of the sons is just a total screw up, and he's the one that's actually married to Dakota Fanning. And he's funny because he's just an idiot. Like he's the guy that has been rich and privileged his whole life, and he's just like, I don't fucking care about anything. So he just does whatever he wants.
Right.
Um, and it works. Like he's funny. But like Nicole Kidman is very stuffy. Liev Schreiber is like he's the pothead dad of the family who's just like riding along for everything because his family is the one that had the money, but
Hmm.
now Nicole Kidman is actually famous, right? So he's just kind of like whatever. I'm just here along for the ride,
Right.
And
I'm in like well, she's in the limelight now, and I'm just kind of the shadow.
yeah, yeah. So he's smoking weed all the time and just chilling, and
Yeah.
like his character is funny because I think Liev Schreiber is a really talented actor and he plays this part really well, but it's kind of just a boring flat part. Like he's just
Hmm.
so content to just cruise through everything that he doesn't have any extremes on either side of the acting bubble there.
Sure.
Um, and like I keep waiting for the like a moment to really blow up. The guy that plays the sheriff, I can't remember his name. Um, he he's really good. He's not intense, but he has like a couple of scenes where he does get kind of intense, but
Hmm.
he does a really good job. It's just it's all around. It's not a bad show. Like it's well acted, it's well made. It's just not as good as some of the other shows that are similar to it.
It gives
Um,
me White Lotus vibes just based on like the
yeah, sort of. I
based
think
on what you're
yeah,
describing, and also just the beautiful location and the fact that it's rich people and they're dysfunctional and apparently a murder happens. Like this is very White Lotus-esque to
yeah,
me.
yeah. That's actually not an inaccurate comparison. I
Description.
think the
Yeah.
difference is that this is a tighter cast. So even though
Sure.
there's like 8 or 9 people, they're all in the same situation. Whereas in White Lotus, you have like here's
Different things
these
going
three
on.
people. Yeah. So it's certainly tighter in that regard. But it's a fair comparison also. It's almost
Hmm.
like a mashup of White Lotus and Big Little Lies, and that makes sense too because White Lotus has its funny moments too. Like there's some characters in there that are
100%.
funny. So yeah, that's not that's a very solid comparison, I think. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's entertaining. I don't hate it. So I would say if you want to. have that escape story of murder mystery and all that, give
Hmm.
it a watch. It was a successful book.
Hmm.
It was a bestseller. I think I saw the book described as like a beach read. Like people would go on vacation and read this book. But
I can see that.
yeah, so
Interestingly enough, though, both the critics and the audience gave it a 54 and a 52%. So, like, not great, but they're pretty in line.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's pretty spot on. Like you could miss this one and life wouldn't be any worse. But if
Sure.
you watch it and the kind of nice thing about it is that if you watch it,
Hmm.
it's only 6 episodes. Like it's going to go quick. It's a limited series, so I think when it's done, it's
Right.
done. So you're not committing a ton to it. So at least you're not throwing your life away trying to watch this big epic thing.
And this just came out because I see it's
Yeah,
2024.
this
Did
came
this come?
out like last week.
Oh, so
So
this is brand spanking new. Got
yep,
it.
yep.
Cool.
So yeah, yeah. I'd say, like I said, if you've got the time, you got nothing to watch, and you want a little bit of um dramatic mystery, whateverness, give it a shot. Otherwise, yeah, you can probably miss it. I'm going to finish it. I'm curious to see.
Yeah.
I'm more curious to see if I'm right than I am necessarily to see what happened, but
Sure. Sure.
we'll see. So
Okay. Cool.
yeah. So all right, and then why don't you take us out with Job, which is a non-musical play, right? Just a stage play
It
in
is a stage
general.
play psychological thriller on Broadway now through the end of October, currently playing at the Hayes Theater on 44th Street. This week and next week are Broadway week, 2 for 1. So I always take advantage of that. And I went with my friend on Friday, which was yesterday, to see Job. I like, well, first of all, I am a big Broadway person. I've been going to Broadway shows since I was, gosh, I want to say like 6, 7, very, very young. And growing up, I did more of the musical thing, but I'd say the past couple of years, I've really been pushing myself to see different types of, and I mean, there's more content out there now than ever before. Hamilton, for example, like there was never like really a rap musical. It just the type of content out there that's being shown live performance style in New York City is fantastic. And something like Job intrigued me when I was reading the description. So it's a two-person show. Both actors apparently were in succession. Sydney Lemon, who plays Jane, and then Peter Friedman, who plays Lloyd. And it was interesting because you arrive in the theater and there is no curtain. It's just an office, a therapist's office. That is the stage. You've got the computer, the desk, you've got two chairs facing each other, as you would imagine a therapist's office looking like. And opening scene, you see Jane show up to this therapist's office for the first time, their meeting, first appointment, and she's got a gun pointed straight at him. Just as like the opening scene, and you're like, what the heck? So, based on reading the description, and they had like a little video marketing and I guess trying to build up hype for the show, you think, all right, this is a girl who's really reached her wits end at in at her job, and she is mentally exhausted, burned out, and she's lost it and needs help. And here's the therapist. So much more than that. So she shows up with a gun. He's, trying to disarm her and tell her, like, hey, put the gun down. Let's talk this out. And of course, she's like, oh, I'm so sorry I did this. Not my intent. You find out that she's was recently hospitalized after having a pretty significant episode and breakdown at work, which you don't see it, but she plays on the phone and gives to him, and you hear screaming. Apparently, she just starts screaming in the middle of her office, and that signals to get her escorted out, and she's hospitalized for the past couple of weeks, maybe a few months, and the whole intent of her meeting with a therapist is for her to get reinstated back to her job. Now, we don't know what type of office job she has, no idea, but you just know that she is under significant amount of pressure, and then you get to hear about her life story. It takes place in California. She works in, Silicon Valley area, very tech focused and high pressure. And she's originally from Wisconsin, went out to California for school, and you learn her backstory of just things she's dealt with in the past, her own personal trauma in college. And over time, you're really just wondering, you're like, what is up with this girl? What is happening? The lights start flickering throughout the show too, to kind of really reemphasize just maybe what's going on in her mind at this point, or flashing back to different pieces. And you find out what she does, and they just say user services. And you're like, okay, what is that? Like, I think immediately, like, is this like a customer or client support role? But you come to find that she is responsible for monitoring content for this tech company and trying to protect the public from seeing very disturbing images, videos, etc., which include child pornography, violence, etc. So for a living, she has to be the eyes and on the lookout, trying to put these type of images, multimedia in the trash can and permanently deleting them so that nobody is able to access this type of stuff. So that being said, it just shows how how much, and you get to see how into and immersed she is into her work, and how she takes it to another level of trying to almost like be a superhero in the sense, and try to feel like she has to save the world, because if she's not able to get in front of this content, it's going to get into the wrong hands, and the wrong type of people are going to unfortunately be exposed to this information, start paying for it, et cetera. And then starts going down like a really ugly path. You learn more about the therapist, that he looks to be about like in his 60s, and he has a 12-year-old son and a daughter who you find who had committed suicide. So he sort of, I think, feels for Jane and what she's going through. And he's trying to see if she's suicidal, if she's a threat to herself and nobody or anyone else. And she claims that she's not. She's just very burnt out, it seems, at the very beginning. And then you try to understand like where she's coming from. And then she goes down this crazy rabbit hole of explaining her job and what she does. And there's different points in the show where they'll just do like a still, like frozen. What am I trying to say? Basically, they freeze time, and then she'll walk around the room and he's frozen. And it's just very fascinating. And she's apparently there because she wants him to sign off that she is mentally okay to go back to work. And you notice she's, asking him questions about his life and what he does outside of work and what his passions are. And she mentions that in her work, she's able to really come face to face to some of these like child predators or harmful people that she unfortunately has gotten a hold of in or on her desk, or right in front of her on her screen, through these harmful multimedia images, videos, etc. And there's been one scenario where this particular person keeps on sliding or slipping through the cracks, and she's been trying for months, if not years, to get a hold of this person because of the harmful videos he's putting out of a young boy and girl. Which you're at that point, you're like, what is going on? Like, you're learning about her job, why she's so stressed out. She's mentally like not okay. And a lot of it, you're like, maybe from just the hard job of seeing the images that she's seeing time and time, and I'm just going to spoil it. Long story short, you get to the end and she ends up revealing and she goes into his desk and she takes like a mask and it's like a pixelated face of a mask and she puts it over his face. And you're like, that's really weird. Like she just mentally not okay. She having, I don't know if she's schizophrenic. You just don't know what's going on mentally, where she's just having these visions or what's going on. And you'll see like in the background, it's basically the stage and then it's a black background. And then all of a sudden, like there's like different noises and sounds of just her past or just like as if you're on a computer and then lights come on and it's really crazy because you're like, is this going on in her head? It's just very dramatic. And she pins and finally confirms that this therapist is that missing part of the puzzle and is one of the sexual predators or child predators, molesters that she's been trying to go after for the past couple months, years, etc. And she has found him and purposely sought him out to be her therapist so that she can finally meet him face to face and stop this at once. And ending scene, she brings out the gun again out of her bag, and then the lights go out. Show is over, leaving you to believe, did she shoot him? Did she not shoot him?
Oh, so it
At one
doesn't even
point,
give you like the pop.
yes, but it was so good. And for it's an 80-minute show, no intermission. Kevin, it was great. It was so good. And like at the beginning, you're just like, all right, she's just like out of her mind. And this guy is, but well, first of all, you're like wondering why isn't he calling the cops? But he's like, okay, she's got a gun. And at one point, you hear knocking. He's like, that's my next appointment. She's like, tell them to leave. So he's texting. She's like, show me the text message. And you're just like, all right, she's very disturbed. What is up with this girl? And then, yeah, this whole thing unravels, and you're just like, oh shit, this is really effed up. And she's beyond takes matters of into her own hands. And this is interesting. But my friend that I went with, he also works in tech like myself. He's like, and this is why you don't bring your work home with you. So, but it shows that like she took it to another extreme, and you
Yeah,
can't save everyone, and you really got to leave your work at work and separate that from your personal life.
yeah, yeah. It sounds really intense. I think I think I looked up the show itself like after you told me about it last week that you're going to see it, and it definitely comes across that it's drama, like for sure. It's heavy drama.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it sounds really good. It sounds like something that it could be adapted to. Excuse me, that could be adapted to a movie, but at the same time, like maybe the subject matter is too heavy for theater or for a movie. Like theater has always been like to me, you get away with a little more heavy material in theater than you do in a movie in a lot of cases. But with the right director, I guess you could pull it off. I mean, there's been
Definitely.
some great heavy movies done in.
I actually think it would be a very good movie and they could do more with it because, I mean, it's just The Office.
Mhm.
They could probably take this, just being that it's outside of a stage and show more of the story, maybe do more with the flashbacks or just what's going on with her. So, yeah, and they're very funny comments that are thrown into like the beginning and even the middle of the show where you're like, okay, this girl's having a panic attack. She's very progressive. She is extreme in her viewpoints. She's incredibly paranoid and should not go back to work for sure. And why she's so adamant about going back to work. You're wondering why someone who's suffering so much. And she says in the show, she's like, I just want to be in a hospital bed. But yet you want to go back to work. It's so odd, and then it all makes sense at the end.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's like, who in their right mind who was just hospitalized was like, yeah, I want to go back to work, but also I want to be in a hospital bed, and it's confusing. And I think this therapist is really trying to figure out like what is going on with this girl. and she's really trying to get reinstated, but it's like, is she though? And then you find out she's trying to put the pieces together and figure out who this guy is and if he's the man that she's been trying to track down. And obviously, you assume that his daughter committed suicide because of the horrible
Because
acts
yeah,
that she's forced to do. Yeah. So, yeah, it was heavy, but I was amazed by the end with the twist. That was intense. And I'm appreciating plays now more than ever because the like the plays that I've seen this year so far, An Enemy of the People, the one with Jeremy Strong that I
mm-hmm,
reviewed
hmm,
earlier this year, and then the one with Sarah Paulson that I saw. She won. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure
yeah.
she won a Tony.
That's the one that took place all in their living room, right?
All in their living room. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
That one won, I think, for play appropriate. That one I think was a revival. Actually, the other one was a revival too. This I don't believe is I think this is fairly new content, but all three were great. And here's the thing about plays, though, they're usually short runs. Like An Enemy of the People maybe ran for, I don't know, 4 months. Same thing with Appropriate, like no more than like 3, 4 months. This is running, I think it just started like 2, 3 weeks ago, and it's done by the end of October. So I find it fascinating why plays are not things that get, I don't even know if the words it's contracts, but they're short runs. Whereas like you have certain musicals, they see how they perform, and then I mean, depending on the ticket sales, I mean, Wicked's been running for like 20 years now. You
Yeah,
got
yeah.
Chicago that's been running for
Phantom of
like
the Opera.
around 30, right? Book of Mormon is one of the ones that's been out for at least 5, 6, 7, 8 years right now, and that's been very successful. So you never know how a performance will go, but you don't see plays running for more than a few months at a time. I can't recall a play at this point that I'm like, wow, this ran longer than a couple of months at a time. But when they do release plays, a lot of them are good. A lot of
Yeah,
them are very good, and depending on the topic, I mean, they range a vary of topics too. Broadway isn't just like, all right, we're gonna watch a flatbird dance and talk about
yeah,
what it's like to be in Prohibition, because that's literally what I think when people are like, oh, I don't want to see a musical because they
yeah,
think of like 42nd Street or something like Annie Get Your Gun, like that's the old school
yeah,
Broadway, which I love too, right? But the past couple of years, I mean, gosh, Hamilton and Rap. Rent is a rock opera. That's one of
yeah.
my favorite musicals of all time.
Jekyll and
There's
Hyde is
just,
horror. Like they've got all kinds of stuff. Like it's yeah. I think
it's
my guess is that plays don't run as long because acting as acting is less niche than acting and singing. I feel like maybe there's fewer genuine talents that can do the things that people can do in a musical. And I think people that are doing plays, I think, are probably trying to move on to that next bigger thing. Like musicals, when you think of Broadway, even if you're not thinking of old musical, you're still thinking of musicals generally. Like plays
right,
happen on Broadway, but you're thinking of musicals. When you think about dramatic performances that are, sans music, you think of
right,
TV and movies. And I think
sure.
maybe those people are looking for that next thing. So they don't want to be tied into a contract as
Yeah,
long. And, they just, I don't know. It's just a guess. Like I have zero research on that, but
yeah.
I
I
feel
mean,
like
and they have a lot of like celebrities and people that are in TV shows that, I mean,
mhm.
Robert Downey Jr. is going to be in something new in the next month or two that runs at Lincoln Center. I was already looking at tickets. I think they start at like, I don't know, 180. Like, and it's because it's Robert Downey Jr. You get a
Yep,
big
yep.
name, people want to see them perform. And
Yeah,
I
Hugh
mean,
Jackman just did Music Man, right? That was what the one he just did.
yes, but that's a classic
Yeah,
musical.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had Eddie Redmayne in Cabaret, which so,
Hmm.
and that's interesting too. Some of these musicals, they'll just rotate celebrities out. So he ends, I think, this week, and then Adam Lambert is going to be playing his role in
Okay.
Cabaret. They did the same thing for like Sweeney Todd. They had, why am I blanking out on Josh Groban, and then they
Hmm.
had Aaron Speights, take his place when they had Sweeney Todd, which that entirely was running for maybe like a little over 6 months, but they switched cast members. So like certain shows they'll put big celebrities or like pretty well-known people and they only last for a while. So I mean like Nicole Scherzinger is going to be in I think Sunset Boulevard and that comes out October, November. That will probably only run for a couple months because do you think she's going to be doing Broadway for more than 6 months? Probably not. She's got other stuff to do.
That's an
Um,
interesting show too, because that's not the most modern show. Sunset
okay.
Boulevard, like it's a good show, but it's
It's a
definitely
revival. That's
like,
all I know.
yeah, I saw it when I was in high school, and I think even then it may have, maybe it wasn't. Is it Weber? Is Sunset Boulevard?
Let me check. Sunset Boulevard.
But
1950s film, musical by Christopher Hampton and Don Black.
yeah, definitely not Weber if it's from the 50s. But
Oh, wait,
yeah,
composer Andrew Lloyd Webber. You're right. You're
okay,
right.
okay.
First performance was in 1991.
Yeah, because it's about the 50s. I don't, maybe that's what it is. And
Yeah.
it's about an actress whose career is, basically coming to an end. I
Yeah.
think
He's
God,
got so much stuff.
Weber,
And
oh
I mean, I'm
he
reading
owned the
here.
80s and 90s.
Oh, yeah. Sunset Boulevard, Evita, Cats. So when my parents met in 80, 86 and 87, they went on a bunch of dates. And I don't know if it was my mom or my dad. One of them had tickets and they were like, "Do you want to go see Cats?" And they're like, "Yeah." They said it was fantastic. And then the movie came out before COVID and they said it was absolute garbage. I think it got panned. Like
Oh
that's how
yeah,
bad
yeah, it
the
was
movie
hot
was,
garbage. Yeah,
which I never got to see, but I do want to see Cats eventually. It will come back eventually, right? Because it's one of those um, classic shows. But yeah, he really puts out some like really good shows. Him and like Stephen Sondheim, I think, is like the American equivalent. And
well,
now that
Sondheim
Sondheim
was
had passed,
earlier. Yeah, it was like Sondheim, and then it was Weber, and then there was there was one more person that was doing a lot. Now it feels like it's
Lin-Manuel
Yeah,
Miranda,
yeah.
he's doing a lot of
He's
stuff.
pumping everything out. I think it would have been the dude that did Rent, but he
Jonathan
passed
Larson.
away. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was there for him to take, but unfortunately he passed away. Um, but yeah, Lin-Manuel Miranda is all over the place right now. Um,
he's
he
incredibly talented. But you know what?
yeah,
He's like, I don't know if he's gonna. I mean, I'm sure he'll put out another play soon or musical, whatever he does. But he's so busy writing music for like Disney
for
movies,
everything else.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Everything
Disney
else,
bought him.
yeah,
So
basically, right?
yeah.
And then he was in this in 2019 or the newest Mary Poppins Returns
hmm
that film
hmm
he was in. He's just like I don't like Hamilton. I like In the Heights. I love that show. That well, I shouldn't say the show, but the movie. I love that movie. But yeah, he that guy is a creative genius.
Yeah,
Like,
he is talented. He's
whew,
very talented.
he's so
So
talented. Yeah, so but like Stephen Sondheim passed away, I think in what 2021, 2022, and all of his shows are coming back. Like they had Sweeney Todd and they had Company come back, and I think one of his other shows is coming back next year. So they're just reviving like a bunch of his stuff for
it
yes,
makes sense.
Stephen
He had a
Son.
hell of a career too.
Yeah, he died. Oh, end of 2021, November of 2021, and
He
he's
was
a
not
new.
young though, right? Like he died.
He was at least in his 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe even 90s. Yeah, he lived a long life. 91 years old. Yep, 91 years old. I'm just looking at like all these shows. Folly, Sweeney Todd, Into the Woods, which is such a good show.
hmm
Company, they did I saw Company, was it last year or 2022? They rolled that. Merrily We Roll Along. That was huge because they had Daniel Radcliffe was in that at the
That's
end of
right.
last. That
Yep.
was like so super expensive. Like start tickets started at like I think like 200. Just the oh my God, just his resume of just shows
Yeah, yeah. He's
unbelievable.
yeah, just a ton, an absolute ton of shows. So
So, but a lot to look forward to in Broadway in the end of 2024 into 2025. I'm excited. I try to see show at least once every 2, 3 months. So I am looking forward to doing stuff maybe around the holiday season, if not definitely in
Yeah.
January, end of January, early February for the next round of Broadway Week 2-for-1 deals.
Cool. Yeah, hopefully some more good plays. I'm almost more fascinated by plays on Broadway than musicals because I've seen so many musicals and been in, a handful and all that.
Sure.
I've always found stage acting to be almost harder than musicals. Like it seems like it shouldn't be, but like musicals,
Hmm.
there's so much going on, and so
Right.
much like that you're seeing and feeling and taking in that the just straight acting doesn't quite come as forward as it does in just a straight play. So
100%. And there's a lot of stuff that's really great that's off Broadway too, that eventually either
mhm,
comes to Broadway or it's just new content. But I mean, I'm looking at like what's playing now. There's a lot of like adaptations of like movies and books that have been turned into, because like The Great Gatsby's running now. They have, I mean, I mentioned this a couple months ago when I saw Water for Elephants, which was a book and then a film and now a show. The Outsiders won Best New Musical, and that's an adaptation of F.C. Hinton's book.
mm,
That's supposed to be fantastic. I'm just like going through to see like even what else. I mean, Wicked's been running for a while, and now Wicked's going to be a film that comes out. I mean, we talked about this.
yeah,
It's coming out in the end of November, so good vibes there for Thanksgiving and the same type of magic that I thought that appealed to people from an advertising perspective as
yeah,
Wonka last year.
yeah. All right, cool. All right, well, I don't have anything else, and we went through all your stuff, so I think we're
Yes.
good. Um, maybe this week, I haven't heard about anything coming out this week, so maybe I'll actually watch all the stuff that I said I was going to watch like 3 times. I still need to watch The Fall Guy. I still need to watch Chaos. I still need to watch Terminator Zero. So I'll try and watch those and see if I can talk about those unless something else pops up. I think Andrew is still out for one more week. I don't think he's back next week, and he's back the following week. You're back next week?
I'll be here next week. Yep.
All right. Then we will do that. So, to everybody watching or listening, I say thank you for being here, and we will see you next time.